now return to the Transformers.
Transformers is a really wacky franchise, right? Even the most casual fan has some knowledge of characters and figures that are just so strange in comparison to the basic idea behind the brand. Take for instance Optimus Prime, the face of Transformers himself. Truck that turns into a giant robot man. Simple, classic, iconic. There's nothing too strange there. But then at the other end of the spectrum, you have characters like Ejector, who turns into a tiny toaster. Or Flywheels, a tank and a jet that cannot become robots themselves, but can piggyback off of each other to make one robot. Kind of odd, a little weird. However, one character has always stood out to me as the definition of just so wacky and so ludicrous, it goes back around to being the coolest thing ever conceived. And his name is Bludgeon. Bludgeon is a Decepticon originally from the G1 continuity who first appeared in the Pretenders toy line. He was a small robot who turned into a small tank. That in itself isn't strange. However, the gimmick of the Pretenders was that they had special armor that acted as a sort of disguise, and according to this old commercial, could also be used as a Timefall style mech that would fight alongside them in the heat of battle? Okay, that's already pretty cool.
But I'm not done yet!
Bludgeon's Pretender armor was a maroon and yellow samurai with hints of toxic neon green and orange, who wielded a giant energy sword with a skull for a face. I do not care how old and rickety you are. That is the coolest design for a Transformer ever. It just works. It's just so cool. With such a cool design, there's several figures of this character, but I'm just here to talk about two that go in wildly different directions with Bludgeon. The Super 7 action figure and the 2009 Revenge of the Fallen Voyager. Is this a review? Kinda. A retrospective? Sorta. Time to get bludgeoning? Definitely. Super 7, Part 1. You know. Starting with Super 7, this 2023 release of Bludgeon acts as a stand-in for two things within your collection, the Pretender shell and the classic comic design, alongside half of the tank mode of the Air Robot if you really needed that. I didn't. At the expense of not being able to transform, this figure goes from maximum accuracy to how Bludgeon looked within his earliest appearances, with bright, vibrant colors, not a single bit of kibble, and proportions that don't really give off giant robot, but more so Power Ranger villain of the week vibes.
When evil space aliens threaten Earth, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, in their Dinozords, morph to become the Megazord.
This translates to a figure that looks out of place next to more standard modern Transformers, but just kills next to the comic book edition figures such as Grimlock and Shockwave. Enhanced by a more organic design with armor that breaks up the colors well and gives them a threatening silhouette and a perfect skull for a face. It really looks as if the character left off the comic book into your collection and shrunk down to the size of a water bottle. It's loud, it's proud, it demands your attention, and that is awesome. This accuracy to the classic design is the entire selling point of the figure, as well as the others in the Super 7 line. But, you know, it is a little bit of a shame his posing is a decade or two in the past. Despite being accurate to the classic design, as an action figure, Super 7 isn't really pulling off $60 figure posability. At best, it's giving $20 figure. I mean, you can eke out a pretty cool pose or two, but you're not getting superposing out of Super 7. Simple 90-ish degree movements, limited by the armor at times, loose, unsteady, although the original shell could only really move its arms up and down, so at minimum, I guess you could pull off the only pose the Air Shell did, which was the Thriller. Accessories are pretty solid. I will say that definitely helps to justify the price. You get not one, but two swords complete with sheaths, alternate hands, a laser rifle, the top of Bludgeon's tank mode, which acts as both a shield and a cannon on his arm, two different helmets, a regular head, an alternate screaming head, which looks like the comic, and also a creepy Halloween animatronic.
Let's open the blinds and maybe we're gonna see some stars out today.
And a ball joint with wires sticking out, which mimics when he was decaffeinated by Megatron. The pegs on the accessories are somewhat loose, which is irksome at times, but the overall amount of accessories at your disposal is nothing to scoff at. Transformation is not there. You could pretend that he's half transformed with the tank shield, but it's Super 7. That is not the point. Action figure first, vehicle mode, never. Overall, as an action figure of the most ridiculous and somehow most awesome thing you'll ever see in your life, I'd give it a solid 6. The lack of posing potential really does hinder a lot of the enjoyment you'd get from the figure, but I can't be upset that it's a large-scale figure that brings the classic design to modern day with a bunch of cool accessories. That's what you want, and that's what you get.
I am Optimus Prime. We have brought our war to your world.
Now for my boy, 2009's Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class Bludgeon. This is just the best. Okay, so this toy was released at the height of the Bayverse. Revenge of the Fallen was in theaters, every black and yellow Camaro you ever saw was mistaken for Bumblebee, Optimus Prime was ripping off the Fallen's face. It was a banger time. Speaking as a kid who grew up in that era, the Revenge of the Fallen / Hunt for the Decepticon toy line to me represents an apex of the Bayverse toys. And Voyager Bludgeon is to me the perfect Bayverse adaptation of a G1 design. This figure, despite being well over a decade and a half years old in age, gave me everything I wanted as a kid. I remember I saw a Bludgeon from my local Toys R Us when it was still around. I saw the dope tank, I flipped over the box, and I said, it's a robot that looks like a samurai. It's got armor, and it's got a sword, I gotta have it. And then I did, for a solid 5-ish years until I lost it at the Goodwill. Lo and behold, I got a Nerf figure as an adult with an upgrade kit to make his head G1 accurate, and which also gave him a metallic sword. Slap some Toy Hack stickers on to accentuate the details and a spritz of cheap silver paint, and you got one of my favorite Transformers in the past 15 years of my life. I'm gonna geek out so hard right now. Okay, just look at it, my guys. Revenge of the Fallen Bludgeon is beautiful. It is a figure that should work as well as it does, considering that the Bayverse design philosophy starts and ends at let's have this rectangle turn into 50 Swiss Army knives pretending to be a stick. And Bludgeon does somewhat follow this ethos. The underskeleton is just that, a skeleton. His arms and legs show thinness. And on a Nerf figure, this may have been a severe downside, but on this figure, it just works because of 2 critical reasons. One, it's Bludgeon, so the skeleton motif can always be expanded on. And this carries that from just the head to other sections of the body, increasing the skeletonness by like a solid 20%. The second reason, it makes Bludgeon look like a Terminator. Moving on to the armor itself, despite having to transform into a tank, the samurai aesthetics aren't sacrificed in the slightest. The mass of the tank bits are turned into the bits of the samurai. I don't know what samurai armor bits are called. Okay, hold on. Okay, the spoilers are chunky with extra layers provided by the orange and silver mechanical details, looking asymmetrical as if the suit is holding unique gear. The gauntlets on either arm are imposing, like maroon boxing gloves. The tassets flanking either leg and the center hanging off, one of them holding a tiny sheath for a tanto. Very neat. Down at the legs, after some gears and mechanical bits that actually rotate alongside the leg, you have the greaves, which are made to look like tank treads flanked around the back by the sides of the tank, which bulk out the admittedly chicken-esque lower legs to give them some real stomping power. All of this armor is dope on its own, but there are 3 spots that I need to highlight as to what gives this figure the design pizzazz. The tank treads. Now, there is one major issue with these tank treads, but I will mention that later. These treads are made of rubber, which locks into place on vehicle mode. However, in robot mode, these act as extensions of the spoilers and tassets, adding even more protection and armor to the figure. It's a concept I've never seen pulled off in tank Transformers. Most times, the tank treads are just there for show and become a piece of set dressing for the robot. Legs, arms, giant shoulder pillars. Using the treads as extra armor just works so well to make the robot all the more imposing. The kibble. The major kibble on the robot mode is the tank turret, which sits on the back. Usually a piece of kibble this ginormous would be very hard to justify. However, this one just works. It looks threatening, especially when put on a horizontal side. Not only that, it has a completely unneeded gimmick where it splits open Mecha Lifestyle to house the Tanto, which is not the only way to hold the Tanto, by the way. It didn't need those additions, like at all, especially with the gears, but it's wanted and it's appreciated. Even without my upgraded kit head, the original design was a stellar update that, while not as skull-like, showed malice, almost like a hockey mask, and was complemented by that chest design, which also looks like a skull. A stellar upgrade to the original armor. Ultimately, that's just this design down to a T. Upgrades. All aspects of the 80s robot mode are enhanced, from goofy cool fun to can this guy please battle someone to the death. I could just picture a fight between Drift or Ironhide with Bludgeon as a boss to take down. Okay, posing isn't the most modern thing ever. You get a little bit of a head swivel, you get standard arms and legs with some increased mobility in the arms due to their skeletal nature. No wrist or waist swivel, no ankle joints. It's definitely a figure of its era, but I don't think that stops it from looking impressive and domineering, especially when you have both blades out. It has a unique thing where it's more limited than the Super 7, but it also has more going on. Like, he's not pulling off ninja poses, but at the same time, what poses he does pull off are domineering and intimidating. Accessories are a bit off since I have the upgrade kit, so I have two different weapons, but originally accessories included the katana and the tanto. Mine have a metal look, whereas the original was just gray plastic. Either way you have it, still cool weapons. The upgrade head on my Bludgeon is G1 inspired, but it can also spin around to have the IDW style spaghetti monster face, which looks cool, don't get me wrong, but I like the skull better. This is one area where the Super 7 shines brighter, but the Voyager still isn't too bad. It's like a la carte accessories, boneless accessories. Transformation. The Voyager does a lot better than the Super 7. No way. Yeah, this Bludgeon is fun in how it utilizes the chunks to fold up into the lower body of the tank. The turret itself does absolutely nothing, but I think that works in its favor since you essentially are turning the robot into a compact rectangular prism. As a result, the turret on top doesn't suffer like it does with our tanks. My favorite part of this transformation is always how the arms make the front of the tank, and how the treads interlink together, and the cool way the head just disappears in the chest cavity. It's just Bludgeon turns into a Type 90 tank, a real-world MBT used in Japan. This is such an amazing translation of the real-world vehicle, one worthy of the title Robot in Disguise. It hides the robot kibble with grace and stores the weapons beautifully. The tank is bulky, and the turret rotates perfectly, and it roars! It's just so cool. But there is one glaring flaw. The tank treads are made of rubber. However, because life is cruel sometimes, this specific rubber has a nasty tendency to melt, and that could lead to the plastic on the figure itself melting away. I do not know why, I'm not a math guy, but I am really lucky because that hasn't happened to me yet. So the tank and the robot mode are both completely fine, and by fine, I just mean perfection. I love this figure. Young me was a fool for sending it to the Goodwill Zone. It really is an amazing figure. 8 out of 10. It doesn't really fit as a fully realized Bludgeon. It's got some limited posing, and the accessories are a bit light, and that rubber. But, I mean, just look at it. It is truly iconic and one of the best toys to come out of an already amazing toy line. What posing it has works, and the gimmicks are so neat. If you're able to have one that doesn't have the melted rubber treads, it's not really that big of a deal, as long as you're just careful. So yeah, love this figure as much as I hate Revenge of the Fallen. Gorgeous. Okay, that's two Bludgeons. Comparing the two figures side by side, it's quite apparent how different and how similar they both are. Design. Voyager asks, what if Bludgeon was real? The Super 7 asks, what if Bludgeon was brought into reality? Posing. Super 7 has more, but is held back by its armor. Voyager uses what it has to be more dynamic overall. Accessories. Super 7 is armed to the teeth and gives you everything you'd want. Voyager gives you just what you need. Because, let's be honest, who cares about the laser rifle? Transformation. Easy enough. Voyager transforms, Super 7 doesn't, unless you count the top of the tank turret, which is like half of the I don't, okay? Overall, I think they are both really fun takes on the most ridiculously awesome Transformer ever. If you're on the hunt for a Bludgeon, I say go for Super 7 if you want to have a cartoon-accurate Bludgeon through and through. It lacks transformation, which I know can be a no-no for some collectors. However, counterpoint, it is one of the most impossible Transformers to do G1 accurately on account of there not even being a vehicle to be G1 accurate to. Remember, shell. So, enjoy what we have, which is, while somewhat limited in posing power, still a really fun figure that is heightened by the amazing dedication to the OG design. Go for Revenge of the Fallen Voyager if you want to. As a Bayformers hater, I love this thing. It's great as a Bayformer, as a tank transformer, as a transformer period. It takes Bludgeon from the 80s into the modern day and doesn't falter in the slightest. It's just got that magic touch. This mold was used 4 times for a reason. The rubber does bring it down a little, but this is the pinnacle of Bayformers, aside from Revenge of the Fallen Optimus and Movie 1 Brawl. Either one of these would be a really good fit in your collection as long as you don't lose them at the good old Goodwill. They may have their differences, but both are stellar representations of the skull-faced psycho samurai, the one, the only Bludgeon.